Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. A Russian strike on a passenger train in northeastern Ukraine kills 5 people. The United States announces military drills in the Middle East amid Iran tensions. And Doomsday Clock was moved to 85 seconds to midnight, marking its closest point to global catastrophe. Ukraine says Russian drone attacks have intensified. 5 people were killed when a passenger train was hit in the northeast, while 3 others died in overnight attacks in the southern city of Odessa. The escalation comes as diplomatic efforts to end the war continue.
Ukraine says Russian attacks have intensified after a drone strike hit a civilian passenger train in the country's northeast overnight on Tuesday, killing at least 5 people. Prosecutors say the train was struck in the Kharkiv region as it traveled from western Ukraine toward Barvinkov. One drone hit the train directly while 2 others struck nearby, setting several carriages on fire. President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the attack as terrorism, saying there was no military justification for targeting a civilian train. He said more than 200 passengers were on board and urged Ukraine's partners to increase pressure on Moscow. The strike came just hours after another Russian drone attack on the southern port city of Odessa earlier the same night. Officials say at least 3 people were killed and 25 wounded as drones hit residential areas and energy facilities. Several buildings were badly damaged and rescue efforts are still underway. Ukraine's Air Force says Russia launched around 165 drones overnight, most of them intercepted, though power outages were reported in several regions, including Kharkiv and Odessa. Moscow hasn't commented on the latest attacks. The escalation comes as diplomatic efforts continue. Ukrainian, Russian and US officials held talks in Abu Dhabi last weekend, and another round of discussions is expected on Sunday.
US President Donald Trump says his administration will de-escalate a little bit in Minnesota, following 2 fatal shootings by federal immigration agents that sparked protests and national criticism.
President Donald Trump said Tuesday that his administration will scale back operations in Minnesota following 2 fatal shootings by federal immigration officers. In a Fox News interview, Trump described the incidents as regrettable, calling them terrible, and suggesting the victims should not have been carrying firearms. He noted that the operation had removed thousands of criminals from the state, but acknowledged the need to reduce tensions.
We're going to de-escalate a little bit, but I will tell you, you look at the numbers, they're doing better than they've done in many years. I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun that was fully loaded and he had 2 magazines with him, and it's pretty unusual. But nobody knows when they saw the gun, how they saw the gun, everything else. Bottom line, it was terrible. Both of them were terrible. The other was terrible, too. And I'm not sure about his parents, but I know her parents were big Trump fans. Makes me feel bad anyway, but I mean, I guess you could say even worse. They were.
The White House has reassigned Border Patrol official Gregory Bovino, replacing him with the administration's border czar, Tom Homan, who has met with local officials, including Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey, in a show of détente. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem defended the agent's actions, while local authorities and eyewitnesses have challenged official accounts of the shootings. Lawmakers from both parties have called for investigations into the deaths, and a federal judge has blocked the Department of Homeland Security from destroying or altering evidence.
President Trump visited Iowa on Tuesday to discuss economic initiatives, including tax cuts, new regulations for small businesses, and benefits for farmers. He emphasised policies aimed at supporting rural communities and the service industry ahead of the upcoming midterm elections.
With the economy on his mind, and in a purposeful, direct effort meant to boost political prospects of Republican candidates ahead of midterm elections, President Trump made a trip on Tuesday to the state of Iowa in the American Midwest, where he delivered a major speech. The president highlighted tax cuts for working families and major tax refunds expected to help millions of American taxpayers, and new regulations passed by the Trump administration meant to boost small businesses and workers in the service industry.
Today, just after 1 year of President Trump, our economy is booming, incomes are rising, investment is soaring, inflation has been defeated, our border is closed, totally closed.
Trump's speech in Iowa honed in on the issue of affordability and enacting regulations that will provide major economic incentives and open new markets for American agricultural producers across rural communities. Corn growers had been hit particularly hard with the recent tariffs on China, a country which had been a major market for Iowa's soybean farmers. With the state's rural economy reeling, President Trump's announcement in Iowa that he will push for a deal in Congress to finalize approval of new benefits for farmers also received wide acclaim. This is part of President Trump's long-term strategy to expand U.S. corn exports and boost economies in rural communities that are heavily dependent on agriculture. Trump also highlighted his administration's termination of Biden-era environmental restrictions that were proving costly to American family farms.
If congressional Democrats had their way this year, would right now be facing the largest tax hike. So they wanted to give you, this is what I was running against, the largest tax hike in the history of our country. I wanted to give you the largest tax cut in the history of our country. And if they won, this country would be cratering right now.
Meanwhile, the president also mentioned his no tax on tips or gratuity for service industry workers, another major topic and policy that had received wide praise amongst many Americans across the United States. The president is expected to crisscross the country to drive the message home that his economic policies are having a tangible impact for American voters. Politics in America typically can be broken down based on local economic concerns and whether the message of economic improvement is resonating. And in November, later this year, the American voters will go back to the ballot box for midterm elections to deliver their verdict.
Donald Trump says the United States will work out a solution with South Korea after announcing plans to raise tariffs on its imports to 25%. Trump said the move is linked to delays in South Korea's parliament approving an investment deal agreed last year. The announcement caught officials in Seoul by surprise, with lawmakers expected to revisit the issue in February.
So we'll work something out. We'll work something out with South Korea. Mr. President.
Donald Trump has warned that the United States would stop supporting Iraq if former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki returns to power. In a post on social media, Trump said Iraq had fallen into chaos and poverty during Maliki's previous time in office and warned that Washington would withdraw its support if he is reappointed. The warning comes as Iraq's Shiite political alliance, the Coordination Framework, named Maliki as its nominee for Prime Minister. Maliki previously served 2 terms from 2006 to 2014, a period marked by sectarian violence and strained relations with the United States. The US dollar remained near 4-year lows today after President Donald Trump dismissed concerns about its recent weakness. His comments added pressure on the greenback, pushing the yen, the euro and the British pound higher as markets awaited the Federal Reserve's policy decision. Currency traders were still reacting to heavy dollar selling in the previous session, which lifted the euro above the $1.2 mark for the first time since 2021. The euro later eased slightly, trading just below that level. Trump said the dollar was great when asked about its decline, a remark traders took as a signal to continue selling the currency. India and the European Union have reached a historic trade agreement aimed at boosting bilateral trade and reducing reliance on the United States. The deal, hailed as the mother of all deals, will slash tariffs on the majority of goods and could double EU exports to India by 2032. Meanwhile, India maintains a neutral stance on the Ukraine conflict, emphasising dialogue and negotiation between the countries involved.
India and the European Union, EU, signed a long-awaited trade deal on January 27th. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called it the mother of all deals. The agreement will reduce tariffs on most goods, boost two-way trade and reduce dependence on the United States. The EU said exports to India could double by 2032, with tariffs on 96.6% of traded goods either removed or cut, saving European companies €4 billion, $4.75 billion. Germany's major car makers, Volkswagen, BMW and Mercedes, welcomed the deal, saying it would expand Germany's export opportunities. BMW CEO Oliver Zipse called it extremely important for Germany, while Mercedes CEO Ola Källenius said opening markets and strengthening trade would benefit both Germany and Europe. Under the deal, the EU will cut tariffs on 99.5% of Indian imports over 7 years. Products such as seafood, leather, textiles, chemicals, rubber, base metals, precious stones and jewellery will have zero tariffs. Agricultural goods like soy, beef, sugar, rice and dairy are excluded. The deal will also lower tariffs on EU exports to India, including machinery, electrical equipment, chemicals and steel. However, the EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, will not immediately reduce carbon taxes for Indian companies. India will also cut tariffs on alcoholic drinks. Wine tariffs drop immediately from 150% to 75%, gradually falling to 20%, while spirits tariffs fall to 40%. The two-decade-long EU-India trade talks gained momentum after the US imposed 50% tariffs on some Indian goods amid rising global trade tensions.
The Spanish government has announced that it will legalise the status of undocumented migrants, a measure expected to benefit at least 500,000 people. Registration will be available to foreign nationals who do not have a criminal record and can prove they lived in Spain for at least 5 months prior to the 31st of December 2025. Spain's Minister for Inclusion, Social Security and Migration has said that it is a historic day for the country. The European country has seen a large influx of migrants in recent years, mainly from Latin America. Europe has reached a milestone in electric vehicle sales, with fully electric models outselling petrol-only cars for the first time. However, when hybrids are included, internal combustion engines still dominate overall sales. While registrations are rising, ensuring sufficient charging infrastructure and maintaining the competitiveness of European automakers remain key challenges.
Welcome to this day in Europe, where the bloc sees fully electric vehicles outselling petrol-only cars for the very first time. It's a symbolic milestone in the continent's transition from fossil fuels, but it's important to note that many petrol models are now registered as mild hybrids. That means internal combustion engines still dominate overall sales when hybrids are included. The rise in EV registrations underscores progress, but it also highlights a critical challenge: getting enough charging infrastructure in place to support the growing fleet. There are more than 500,000 public charging points across the EU, but studies show the bloc needs to install hundreds of thousands more each year to reach the European Commission's target of 3.5 million chargers by 2030. That's a pace that current growth rates have yet to match. Meanwhile, utilities and grid operators are planning upgrades to handle surges in charging demand and prevent congestion on local networks. That infrastructure gap matters. Without enough chargers, especially high-speed stations along main corridors, EV owners face longer waits and range anxiety, particularly outside major cities. Countries like the Netherlands, which already has one of Europe's most extensive networks, are already warning that even faster expansion is necessary to keep pace with adoption. Europe's EV boom also intersects with heightened global competition. According to the European Alternative Fuels Observatory, Volkswagen reported record EV registration growth last year, a sign that European automakers are fighting to hold ground. At the same time, Chinese brands such as BYD continue to gain share in European markets, putting more pressure on legacy manufacturers and sharpening debates about industrial strategy, supply chains, and technological leadership. For policymakers, the message is very clear. Increasing EV sales is only one part of the transition. Europe must also build the infrastructure and competitive industrial base to sustain that growth while navigating a rapidly evolving global market. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has arrived in China for a 3-day official visit. He says the trip will help make the UK safer and richer, despite concerns about China's impact on national security. Sir Keir travelled to Beijing with more than 50 people from British business, sport and culture. He says economic cooperation with China will not come at the cost of UK security. The Prime Minister said relations between the two countries have moved from a golden age to an ice age, and that the visit aims to improve ties. Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to hold talks with Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara in Moscow today. This marks al-Shara's second visit to the Russian capital following his previous trip in October. The upcoming talks are expected to continue discussions on bilateral relations, defence cooperation and the ongoing restructuring of the Syrian state, further solidifying the long-standing partnership between the two countries. Campaigning for Japan's 8th February snap general election officially kicked off on Tuesday, and all 465 seats in the House of Representatives is up for grabs. Major political parties have held rallies across the country. Of the 465 lower house seats, 289 will be elected from single-member districts, while 176 will be decided through proportional representation across 11 regional blocks. National broadcaster NHK predicts that the campaign will see heated debates over the Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi government's handling of inflation, as well as its foreign and security policies. Atomic scientists have issued their starkest warning yet, moving the doomsday clock closer to midnight than ever before. The decision reflects growing concerns over nuclear tensions, weakening arms control, and the rapid spread of disruptive technologies. Our report explains what pushed the clock forward and what risks scientists are now flagging.
Atomic scientists have moved the doomsday clock to 85 seconds before midnight, the closest point to global catastrophe since the clock was created. The announcement was made in Washington by the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, as experts assessed a worsening global security environment and mounting long-term risks.
The risks we faced from nuclear weapons, climate change, and disruptive technologies are all growing. Every second counts, and we are running out of time.
Scientists say the decision reflects a breakdown in cooperation between major powers amid rising geopolitical tensions. One of the most immediate concerns is nuclear arms control, with the last treaty limiting US and Russian stockpiles set to expire.
For the first time in over half a century, there will be nothing preventing a runaway nuclear arms race.
Beyond nuclear threats, scientists also point to rapidly advancing technologies that are outpacing global regulation.
But instead of working towards international standards governing AI safety, we are running headlong into an AI arms race with what could be dire consequences.
Experts involved in the assessment say the spread of disinformation is further undermining trust and stability worldwide. Created in 1947, the doomsday clock is used to illustrate how scientists assess global risks. The latest setting reflects their view of current international and technological pressures.
We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll discuss the historic EU-India trade agreement, what's in it, what's left unresolved, and its global implications. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. The European Union and India have finalised what leaders are calling the mother of all trade deals, a landmark pact that aims to deepen economic ties beyond tariffs to include jobs, investment and strategic cooperation. While the deal is called a breakthrough, some analysts say the story isn't over, with details still to be agreed and broader geopolitical consequences to be weighed. Let's bring in our guest, Enrique Cusero. He's a political analyst joining us from Madrid, Spain. Enrique, thanks for joining the program.
Thank you for having me.
So as I said in the intro there, the agreement is being described as a peak as far as trade deals are concerned. If compared with previous EU trade deals, is the description justified, and why?
I think it's funny. The first thing when I heard about the deal, it was the mother of all deals, which in some sort just makes some competition with all these rhetoric by Donald Trump. There's some sort of trying to get a draw in rhetoric. But jokes aside, I think it demonstrates two things: that there was some sort of a very abstract, very stuck commerce dealing with between the EU and India, and that right now is completely free. And right now is not completely free, but of course is going to make the things easier. And on the other hand, which I think is more important, just slips out completely Donald Trump and his tariff policies, which means that just remembering what Prime Minister of Canada, Carney, said in Davos, calling for all the other, if we want to call it just right now, maybe it's not an official term, but right now, not aligned powers, in order to increase their commercial power. This is it. This is one of the main and one of the most important commerce deals that we're going to see between countries that without intervention of the United States, without the influence of the United States. Some sort the influence of the United States is indirect, because without the push and the pressure of Donald Trump in tariffs, maybe this agreement will never appear, but it's here, and I think it's quite an important agreement for the European Union and for India.
Okay, so aside from sidestepping Trump and his tariffs, as you said, at a high level, what are the key elements of this pact? So amongst tariff liberalization, services, rules of origin, regulatory cooperation, and what matters will take longest to implement?
I think this is we were talking about 4 billion euros in savings for the European Union, just trading. Just the price of trading is going to be 4 billion euros in completely saved in once the tariffs are going to be eliminated or decreased. And it's important here that the European Union needs a very huge market outside from the in exports, an exporting market in goods as food, cars. We saw in your program, in your set, BMW and Mercedes-Benz are completely happy. They were glad about this dealing, because those what we can call high standard, maybe luxury cars with the lots or many millionaires and billionaires that India had is going to be a huge market to get. And I see that probably the basic metals is going to be a very good deal, importing basic metals for the EU. But what I see here is that, okay, we have to talk yet about steel, which we know for sure India is some sort of world power in the matter. And I think it opens some sort of trouble for the European Union in everything that comes with marine goods and food and edible things, okay, edible goods, especially marine ones, because we know for sure that the European Union got inside troubles with the fishing, inside troubles with Morocco courts, for instance, with Spain, inside troubles for fishing in the Mediterranean, the quotas, etc., etc., and opening free, almost free trading and commerce with India in those aspects, in those things, in those goods. I think it's not going to be something that is going to be solved today. It's not going to be solved tomorrow, and probably is going to open major trouble in the next months. But let's see. Maybe these guys got everything planned, and it's not going to be a trouble at all.
Well, yeah, we're yet to see that. But two parts to my next question, Enrique. How will this deal affect workers and industries on both sides? So from automotive and pharmaceuticals in Europe to manufacturing and IT in India. And is there credible evidence that this pact will significantly boost jobs and growth in both regions, or are those political expectations ahead of economic reality?
I mean, everything is progressive, right? On this sort of kind of deals. And when I said everything is progressive, or as the Reagan Republicans said, everything is marginal, that means that first and foremost, the main trouble here, or the main concern from the European Union here, is the storage. Got lots of goods in the storage right now, trying to find an exit, trying to find a way out, trying to find a client, a buyer for those goods. And with United States pushing more and more with tariffs and with the uncertainty of I don't know if Trump's tariffs is going to be today 10% and tomorrow 150% over the goods. Those things, those cars or the wine or the food or whatever is gonna be a storage, and it's gonna be just paralyzed for a while. With this, the first thing is that that goods are gonna have a flow to India, which means those storages are gonna get empty or are gonna get in a very productive flow in the next days. If this means more jobs for both sides, for the European Union and India, I think that everything points to that fact. Probably is going to happen. Probably is going to boost the labor market in both sides of the game. But let's see first how this agreement is translated into demand. Because once we know the demand, we're gonna know if those companies, those European companies and Indian companies, can grow and can improve and can just go along with that increasing on demand. Right now, it's important for Europe, and I think it's important for India, that the storages are gonna get empty. And for me, that is the most fundamental part of everything. Just replacing uncertainty with a secure deal.
Okay. Within the EU, some member states have long feared competition from Indian markets. How united is the bloc behind this pact?
This is, in that way, we can say this is a pact of this is a non-aggression pact. India was playing a very tough hand with the cards on the hand, just trying not to get aligned to any country, not with China, not with the United States, not with the European Union, but giving to each of them some sort of pills or some sort of gifts or signals in order to reach an agreement with them and in order to improve their trading with any of those. This makes India, Europe, and the EU main partners, or the most important partners in trading, and that double or triple or multiple faced India in order to get agreements is going to be, I think it's going to be paused, and I think it's going to be more defined in order to put all the white man in this agreement. So probably India is not going to be this mysterious partner or this mysterious agent that we've been seeing the last years anymore. Again, let's gonna see how this evolves, because probably I don't think that Donald Trump is gonna be quiet, and I don't think that Donald Trump is gonna be standing and just waiting for a spontaneous solution. I don't expect that from China, and I don't expect that from Russia. They're gonna make their moves. So I think we are right now in a very primary stage, in a very basic stage, in whatever the conclusions or in whatever the repercussions of this deal is gonna have. And the other players have to play, and the other players have to move. And India is, as we know, India is not a small market for anybody. As long as the EU is, it is neither. But I don't think, as I said before, I don't think Donald Trump is going to be just standing and just waiting to this deal to progress. So maybe we're going to hear some noise in the next days, and maybe we're going to see Donald Trump saying, okay, if you two are dealing, in fact, I think he complained yesterday, but Donald Trump is going to say, if you two are dealing without my consent, and you two are dealing and getting accords without my permission, I'm going to punish you in the, I don't know, probably 150% in tariffs. But let's see.
Certainly points to look out for in the coming days, Enrique. That's all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll look at stories from the region. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. The United States is stepping up its military presence in the Middle East, announcing new exercises as tensions with Iran continue to rise. Washington says the move is aimed at deterrence, while some regional allies are urging caution.
The United States has announced new multi-day military exercises in the Middle East as it deploys a major naval force to the region amid escalating tensions with Iran. US Central Command says the drills are intended to demonstrate Washington's ability to project air power across the region. No details on the timing or location have been released. The announcement comes as CENTCOM confirms the arrival of a US carrier strike group led by the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. The United States has also moved F-15E fighter jets to the region, while the United Kingdom has deployed Typhoon aircraft in what it describes as a defensive role. US President Donald Trump said Washington has positioned a large armada near Iran as a deterrent, while stressing that the United States remains open to dialogue.
And by the way, there's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make a deal. I hope they make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time they'd have a country.
US officials say the carrier deployment reflects a defensive posture aimed at deterrence and regional stability. Iranian leaders have condemned the carrier's presence as destabilizing, with state media stressing national sovereignty and defensive preparedness. The military build-up follows months of unrest in Iran linked to economic pressure and mass protests. Human rights groups estimate thousands have been killed, though exact figures remain difficult to verify due to censorship and internet restrictions. Some US allies have voiced concern, with the United Arab Emirates saying it will not allow its territory or airspace to be used for any attack on Iran, stressing neutrality and regional stability.
Tensions remain high in northern Syria, but diplomatic efforts are continuing. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has held a phone call with US President Donald Trump to discuss the situation on the ground, ongoing ceasefire efforts and bilateral relations.
President Erdogan held a phone call with US President Donald Trump on Tuesday, focusing on developments in Syria and ongoing efforts to stabilize the wider Middle East. According to Turkish state media, the two leaders also discussed ways to boost bilateral trade, particularly in the defense industry field. Following the call, Erdogan said Turkey remains committed to deepening cooperation with the United States and emphasized the importance of fully implementing the ceasefire agreement in Syria. The truce, which was announced earlier this month between Damascus and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, was extended last week by another 15 days. Erdogan warned against the formation of any separate armed entities in Syria, referring to earlier calls by Kurdish groups for autonomy in the region. Speaking to reporters in Ankara, he said there can be no state within a state, stressing the need for a unified political solution under the terms of the ceasefire. He added that the era of violence and terrorism must end, calling on Syrian Kurds not to be misled by what he described as efforts to sow division in the region. This is Adam Maro for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Uzbekistan is expanding engagement with major global investors as a BlackRock affiliate explores potential investments in the country's oil and gas sector and wider infrastructure projects. Our Sevil Rajapova has more.
Uzbekistan has discussed potential investment with Global Infrastructure Partners, a company linked to BlackRock, focusing on oil and gas and infrastructure projects. The discussions were held with the Minister of Investment, Industry and Trade and focused on attracting long-term capital to priority projects. The talks covered opportunities to modernize oil and gas infrastructure, introduce advanced technologies, and support large-scale projects in energy, transport, and sustainable development. Separately, representatives of Global Infrastructure Partners met with Uzbekistan's state oil and gas company to review potential investment options in existing assets and future development projects. All proposals are expected to undergo detailed financial and economic assessment. Uzbekistan's oil and gas sector remains one of the main pillars of the economy, with annual production exceeding 50 billion cubic meters of natural gas, while key international partners already active in the sector include companies from Russia, China and South Korea. The engagement reflects Uzbekistan's broader strategy to diversify investment sources, strengthen cooperation with global institutional investors, and support long-term growth in strategic sectors of the economy. It is Sevil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Armenia and Azerbaijan have reached an agreement on the railway transportation of liquefied gas and bitumen via the territory of Azerbaijan. Armenia's Minister of Economy, Gevorg Papoyan, stated that the business community can already take advantage of this opportunity. In October 2025, President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev announced the lifting of transit restrictions on goods destined for Armenia, leading to the resumption of both direct and transit railway shipments along the route. Azerbaijan's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ceyhun Bayramov, is visiting China as part of official diplomatic engagements. Bayramov will meet Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi later today. The visit comes at a time when Eurasian connectivity, trade diversification and strategic dialogue are moving to the forefront of regional diplomacy, with Azerbaijan playing an increasingly visible and constructive role. Afghanistan's foreign minister has held talks with his Turkmen counterpart, focusing on regional cooperation and key economic projects linking the two countries. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more from Kabul.
According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Amir Khan Muttaqi spoke via video call with Rashid Muradov, who also serves as Turkmenistan's Deputy Prime Minister. The discussions covered bilateral relations, the expansion of regional cooperation, and future joint projects between Afghanistan and Turkmenistan. In a statement released after the call, Afghanistan's foreign ministry said the two sides exchanged views on issues of mutual interest and outlined plans for cooperation in the coming year. Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi welcomed what he described as positive progress in relations between the two countries. He said that with closer cooperation, practical work has now begun on the long-delayed Tapi gas pipeline project. Muttaqi also pointed to progress in railway connectivity and the TAP power transmission project, saying both are close to implementation and reflect expanding economic ties between Kabul and Ashgabat. On the Turkmen side, Foreign Minister Rashid Muradov recalled the historical and friendly relations between the two neighbors. He expressed satisfaction with the growing level of engagement and stressed the importance of coordinated efforts to implement joint economic projects. At the end of the call, both foreign ministers agreed that enhancing regional dialogue and cooperation, particularly between Afghanistan and Central Asian countries, remains important and valuable for long-term stability and development. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
And a sports story now, especially for football fans. Azerbaijan's Karabakh Football Club will face England's Liverpool FC in the 8th round of the UEFA Champions League phase. The match will be played at Anfield Stadium and will kick off at midnight Baku time. The game will be refereed by Slovak FIFA official Ivan Kruzliak. Liverpool currently sit 4th in the standings with 15 points, while Karabakh are 18th with 10 points. A win for the Azerbaijani champions would guarantee their place in the Champions League playoff stage. However, a draw or a loss would leave Karabakh depending on results from other matches. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll discuss a new agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan on transporting liquefied gas and bitumen, and what this means for peace, economics and regional connectivity. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Armenia and Azerbaijan have reached a landmark agreement to allow the rail transit of liquefied natural gas and bitumen through Azerbaijan to Armenia, a result of growing economic cooperation after years of conflict and stalled relations. The deal offers a path to address Armenia's energy supply challenges and could help reinforce confidence building between the neighbouring states as broader peace and connectivity efforts advance. Now, let's bring in our guest, Vasif Husseinov, Head of Department at the Center for Analysis of International Relations from Baku, Azerbaijan. Vasif, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So this agreement marks a significant step in Armenia-Azerbaijan economic relations, and negotiations have moved from decades of tension to this moment of cooperation. How will allowing LNG and bitumen transit through Azerbaijani territory affect Armenia's cost of energy and supply reliability, especially given past supply issues via traditional routes?
Yeah, first of all, let me make it clear that it is not LNG, it is LPG, given the fact that Armenia does not have technical capabilities to import LNG and to use it. It
okay,
is
thanks
LPG,
for alerting me to that.
Petroleum gas, which is going to be imported through Azerbaijan to Armenia. And it comes on the heels of some supply problems in Armenia over the past few months, particularly due to the fact that Armenia's border crossings with Iran and Georgia have become problematic. On the Iranian side, it is due to domestic instability in Iran. On the Georgian side, due to adverse weather conditions. And in the end, Armenia has some problems in that context. And now, due to the fact that our relations with Armenia are getting normalized gradually, and it opens up opportunities for Armenia to alleviate its problems, its supply deficiencies by importing gas from through Azerbaijan from Russia. In the conclusion, in the aftermath of various signals between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the past few months, particularly since Washington summit of August 2025 last year. And since that time, we have reached very significant agreements with Armenia. In October, as you mentioned in your introductory remarks, President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan lifted restrictions on transit to Armenia, and Armenia has already started importing different varieties of goods through Azerbaijani territories. And even from Azerbaijan itself, we have started exporting some petroleum products to Armenia. And now, according to the agreements between the two sides, more are to come. We are expecting in the near future some imports from Armenia. Armenia's economy minister has already announced that there are discussions in that direction. And also some other products from Azerbaijan may be exported to Armenia, not only just petroleum products, but other products as well. So it is very important for not only for Armenia, but overall for regional cooperation in the South Caucasus, because as states start trading relations, it creates more incentives for peace and prosperity in the South Caucasus. So from that perspective, what's happening at the moment between two countries is very important.
Okay, now, Vasif, in a region historically dependent on outside suppliers, does this transit route redefine Armenia's energy security and reduce vulnerability?
Absolutely. It provides more diversification. In the past, Armenia was dependent on Russia and Iran for energy imports, and now it gets further opportunities, not only to import energy from Azerbaijan, but also through Azerbaijan from Central Asia. There have been already some projects discussed between Azerbaijan and Central Asian countries in terms of electricity imports. Azerbaijan is getting prepared to play the role of transit, and Armenia will have the chance to take benefit from all these projects in the region. Until recently, Armenia was in self-imposed blockade due to the occupation of Azerbaijani territories. And this occupation has very significantly restricted geopolitical standing, geopolitical outreach of Armenia. And by the way, not only in geopolitical terms, but also in economic terms. Armenia basically had only two sources of energy, from Iran and from Russia, despite the fact that it had always much better alternative in the South Caucasus, importing cheaper fuel from Azerbaijan, but due to the conflict, it was never possible. Now, as Azerbaijan succeeded to liberate its territories, as we have started normalization process with Armenia, as there are significant agreements have been already signed and started being implemented, Armenia is getting another window of opportunity to reduce its dependency on Russia and Iran. By the way, the relations with Russia and Armenia are not so good at the moment. Armenian government feels in many ways threatened by the Russian side, and in that context, the fact that Azerbaijan can offer cheaper petroleum products, cheaper energy, is very important for Armenia's independence, for Armenia's energy security, and for its.
And how have the US brokered peace framework and other international actors influenced both the timing and acceptance of this deal?
You know, until August last year, there have been several initiatives by some mediators and also by local actors about taking the normalization process between Armenia and Azerbaijan to higher levels, to further levels, but due to different reasons, it was never possible. And therefore, until last year, there was no discussions about starting trade relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, despite the fact that it was already something experts, observers, mediators, some mediators desired, but it was never possible to implement. But thanks to very important mediation efforts of President Trump, it was possible in August last year to reach some tangible agreements between Armenia and Azerbaijan, not only on the peace treaty, which was initialed and now is impending to be signed following the constitutional changes in Armenia, but also on connectivity projects and on, very importantly, on Zengezur corridor. And now in January this month, Armenia's foreign minister and United States Secretary of State signed implementation framework for the trip corridor, Zengezur corridor. And it was mentioned that this is not going to be only a matter of transportation, but it will also open up opportunities for cooperation in other areas, including in energy. So in the future, we may see the exports of energy from Azerbaijan or from Central Asia to Armenia through the trip corridor. Therefore, the mediation, the involvement of the United States in the peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan has been very positive, has been very constructive, and both sides appreciate it very much.
Vasif, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your insight.
Thank you.
That's the news for this hour. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.